Did you know that a sparrow's heart beats up to 1,000 times per minute in flight? That these tiny birds have been living alongside humans for more than 10,000 years? That they can literally die of fright, and that they see the world in shades of pink? And most remarkably of all, they are the most widespread wild birds on the planet. Today, we're going to break down the most incredible facts about sparrows, from their global conquest of the world and their extraordinary abilities, to their family drama, their intelligence, and the shocking historical events that changed the fate of an entire country. You will never look at these small gray neighbors the same way again. Before we begin, drop a comment letting us know what city you're from and whether sparrows have ever been a part of your daily life. Maybe you fed them on your balcony or watched whole flocks in your backyard. Now let's get into it. Picture yourself walking down a busy city street. Cars are honking, people are rushing past, and right at your feet, hopping across the pavement, is a small flock of gray birds. They're jumping around, pecking at crumbs like they own the place, their own personal outdoor restaurant, and you don't even give it a second thought. What you're not thinking about is this. These tiny creatures have been living right beside us for more than 10,000 years. That's right. Back in the era of the first farmers, when people were just beginning to cultivate grain in the Middle East, sparrows had already figured out the most important rule of survival. Where there are people, there is food and shelter. This isn't just coexistence. This is a genuine love story, 10,000 years in the making. Scientists confirmed it through genetic analysis. Around 11,000 years ago, when agriculture first emerged in Mesopotamia, the house sparrow made a pivotal choice. It stopped being a purely wild bird and became a synanthrope, a species completely dependent on humans. Their ancestors noticed that where people harvested grain, seeds were left behind. Where houses stood, crevices appeared for nesting, and sparrows stayed. For good. From that point on, they followed us everywhere. First across Europe and Asia, traveling with settlers and trade caravans and early farms. In Siberia, for example, sparrows only appeared in the 15th century, exactly when Russian farmers began cultivating grain in earnest. They didn't cross oceans on their own. We carried them, sometimes without meaning to, sometimes deliberately, to every corner of the globe. They were brought to America in 1851 and 1852, released in Brooklyn to fight crop-destroying caterpillars. They arrived in Australia in 1863, in the state of Victoria, also from Europe. Then came South America, Africa, New Zealand. Today, the house sparrow lives everywhere. There are people on every continent except Antarctica, making it the single most widespread wild bird on Earth. Scientists estimate the global population at around 1.6 billion individuals, more than any other wild bird species in the world. But the most astonishing thing isn't how far they've spread. It's how perfectly they've adapted to us. Sparrows don't just survive near humans, they thrive specifically in cities. In a major metropolitan area, they feel more at home than they would in a dense forest. Why? Because cities always have food. Crumbs in parks, seeds on balconies, scraps at outdoor markets. Cities are safe. Cats and predators are far less dangerous than in the wild. And cities are full of nesting spots. Under eaves, in ventilation shafts, in the hollows of old trees, in courtyards, even inside traffic lights and street lamps. They make themselves at home in the most unlikely places. Consider this. Sparrows nest and raise chicks on the rooftop of the Empire State Building in New York, 80 floors up, and in Frickley Colliery, a coal mine in Yorkshire, England, an entire colony of sparrows set up home more than 600 meters underground. Miners fed them crumbs, and the birds successfully raised their young in complete darkness, warmed only by artificial heat. That is the deepest any bird has ever been documented nesting and reproducing. Underground, in the dark. They've pushed into the forest tundra and tundra of northern Russia, into the Murmansk region, into Yakutia, places where they had never been seen before. Simply because wherever humans go, food follows. We tend to take sparrows for granted. They're so ordinary, so gray, so everywhere. But they are genuine champions of adaptation. They evolved alongside us. They developed specific genes that allow them to efficiently digest the starch in human agricultural crops. They learn to recognize our faces and understand our habits. They live by our rules while remaining completely wild, not domestic, not tame. They simply chose us as their ideal life partner. Think about it this way. Without humans, sparrows couldn't exist in most of the places they live. When people abandon a village or settlement, the sparrows leave with them. They are a mirror of our civilization. Where we build, they build. Where we eat, they eat. They witnessed the rise of the first cities, the arrival of the first trains, the first airplanes lifting off the ground. They survived every war, every revolution, every climate shift of the past 10,000 years. That's what they are, our eternal companions. Small gray birds that conquered the planet by making one simple decision: to stay close to people. So the next time you see one in your yard, understand that you're not just looking at a sparrow. You're looking at a living legend that predates most of the ancient civilizations we study in school. But how exactly did these eternal companions, these living legends that conquered the planet by staying at our side, manage to adapt so perfectly to every possible condition? The answer lies inside their tiny bodies, which weigh a mere 25 to 30 grams. At first glance, an ordinary little ball of gray feathers. But inside is a genuine marvel of evolution, a complete set of remarkable abilities that allow sparrows to survive where other birds give up. The greatest marvel is the heart. A sparrow's heart runs like a high-performance engine. At rest, it beats between 600 and 850 times per minute. During active flight, it can reach 1,000 beats per minute. That's 10 to 12 times faster than a resting human heart. This powerhouse delivers incredible energy for lightning-fast maneuvers, sharp turns, and explosive takeoffs from a standing stop. It's why a sparrow can look so impossibly quick, launching off the pavement in an instant, dodging a car or a cat without hesitation. But there's a cost to this superpower. The heart burns energy at a furious rate, which means sparrows physically cannot fly for more than 15 to 20 minutes at a stretch. They need constant rest stops. They land on a branch, a ledge, a wire, or even the shoulder of a statue, recover quickly, and take off again. This limitation turns out to be perfectly suited for city life, short bursts from crumb to shelter, from balcony to balcony. Vision is another ability that almost no one knows about. Sparrows see the world with a pinkish tint. They have a specialized eye structure with oil droplets in the cone cells that shifts their color perception. They can detect ultraviolet light, a spectrum completely invisible to humans, and they perceive the world around them with greater brightness, stronger contrast, and additional colors we can't imagine. For a sparrow, crumbs on the pavement, seeds in the grass, and insects and foliage are literally highlighted. This helps them spot food instantly in the chaos of a city, detect danger from a distance, and navigate among cars and buildings and crowds. What looks to us like a gray sidewalk is, to a sparrow, a full map of feeding opportunities, rendered in rose and violet. Now think about the sparrow's neck. It contains twice as many vertebrae as a giraffe. The giraffe, the reigning champion of long necks among mammals, has just 7 cervical vertebrae. The sparrow has between 11 and 25. This allows the tiny bird to rotate its head nearly 270 degrees, look directly behind itself without moving its body, and move its beak with extraordinary precision. It's a built-in safety system and a precision instrument all in one. Danger spotted? The head snaps to face it instantly. Need to pick up an exact crumb? The neck works like a precision mechanism. These abilities allow sparrows to face even the harshest conditions without flinching. They don't fear the cold at all. While many migratory birds flee south for the winter, the house sparrow stays with us year-round. In northern populations, the metabolism accelerates even further. The feathers grow thicker, with extra down that works as a natural thermal suit. They endure temperatures of -40 degrees Fahrenheit by sheltering in our structures, under eaves, in ventilation systems, inside old nests. And here's the most unexpected ability of all. They can swim underwater. When a hawk or a cat drives a sparrow toward water, it can dive in and swim several feet below the surface like a little torpedo. The feathers don't become instantly waterlogged thanks to a special oil coating. The body is light, and within a few seconds, the bird surfaces and takes off, as if nothing happened. It is not a waterfowl, but in a critical moment, it becomes an underwater escape artist. The sparrow's tiny body is a perfectly tuned machine. Hollow, lightweight bones, highly efficient air sacs in the respiratory system that extract oxygen even during exhalation, a high metabolism that can process almost anything from city crumbs and seeds to insects. Everything working together makes the sparrow the undisputed champion of adaptation. These abilities are exactly what allowed it to become the most widespread wild bird on the planet and our constant neighbor for 11,000 years. Superpowers hidden inside the most unassuming body imaginable. Thanks to them, sparrows don't just survive alongside humans, they flourish, remaining completely wild, fiercely independent, and extraordinarily successful. And this is only the physical foundation. Next, we'll see how these same tiny birds build a remarkably complex social life and display real intelligence that continues to astonish scientists. Sparrows are intensely social creatures. They almost never live alone. Day and night, they stay in large colonies, anywhere from a few dozen to several hundred individuals. Imagine the flock chattering in your yard or local park every morning. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone has a role, a set of rules, a place in the hierarchy. This is not chaos. This is a genuine little city with its own laws. Among males, the primary marker of status is the size of the black patch on the chest and throat. This black bib, which scientists call the badge, functions like a business card for social standing. The larger and darker the bib, the higher the male's rank within the flock. Dominant males with large black patches get the best feeding spots, the best nesting territories, and more attention from females. This is not decoration. It is a signal of strength, age, and fighting ability. Young males with a small bib immediately understand. This is not a competition worth entering. This visual code means that serious, sustained fighting is rare within the flock. Everyone already knows who is in charge. Researchers have confirmed that bib size is directly correlated with testosterone levels and actual dominance. Watch a group of sparrows at a feeder closely enough, and you'll see it for yourself. The well-bibbed males send others packing with nothing more than a look. But sparrow social life goes far beyond a simple pecking order. These birds are also remarkably good at recognizing individual people. Yes, exactly that. They remember faces. If you regularly feed sparrows on your balcony or in a park, they will begin to distinguish you from other passers-by. They'll fly closer to you, wait specifically for you, and if someone has frightened or chased them away, they'll remember that person too. There are dozens of documented observations of sparrows in grocery stores and cafes behaving differently toward different visitors. They understand gestures, tone of voice, and even certain human habits. This is genuine social intelligence at a level we used to attribute only to crows and parrots. And here is perhaps their most impressive display of street smarts. Sparrows have learned to trigger automatic grocery store doors in order to steal food. The motion sensor doesn't always pick up a bird that small, but they figured out that hovering in front of the sensor, or simply darting through at the exact moment a door opens for a human, gets the job done. Videos of these little food thieves have spread all over the internet. They walk in, grab crumbs off the floor, and sometimes even work their way toward the display cases. This is not coincidence. It is learned behavior. One bird figured it out, others watched and copied. That is exactly how sparrow social learning works. They observe each other and absorb useful skills. Sparrows are capable of solving complex problems. They don't simply react to food. They plan. They can wait for a person to move away. They can work around obstacles. They can even use other birds as cover. In laboratory experiments, they successfully completed problem-solving tasks previously considered beyond their cognitive reach. And knowledge spreads quickly within the colony. If one sparrow discovers a new food source or a safe new shelter, the whole colony knows about it within a couple of days. This is genuine information transfer within a social group. And of course, we can't leave out their favorite daily ritual, dust baths. Sparrows love bathing in dust. They find a patch of dry soil, sand, ash, or even powdered concrete from a construction site, and start vigorously tossing material all over their bodies. Wings, tail, chest, everything gets coated. From the outside it looks amusing, even a little absurd. But this is essential hygiene. The dust absorbs excess oil, kills parasites, mites, lice flies, fleas, and keeps the feathers in perfect condition. And they almost always do it in groups. One bird starts, and the rest immediately join in. Dust baths are a social event. While you're bathing, you socialize, display your status, do a little chattering. Their entire life is a continuous conversation. Sparrows have dozens of distinct vocalizations. Alarm calls when a cat or hawk is nearby, calls that signal food. Quiet exchanges within a pair or within the flock. They mob predators together. The entire colony will dive at a cat or a hawk, chasing it off with calls and swooping passes. They roost together at night in large shelters, under eaves, in vents, in dense shrubs. This provides both safety and warmth. All of this together makes the sparrow not just a gray city bird, but a genuine master of social life. A brain the size of a pea, yet inside it runs a complex system of hierarchy, learning, recognition, and cooperation. They live in a world where everyone knows their place, and yet everyone helps everyone else survive alongside humans. These are our gray neighbors with real intelligence and a rich social world. And it is exactly this that made them the most successful birds on the planet. But the most fascinating and dramatic part of their world is, without question, their family life. Things there are considerably more complicated than they appear. Monogamy, infidelity, consequences, and the raising of chicks, all of it more layered than you'd expect. Sparrow pairs are typically monogamous. A male and female choose each other once per season, build a nest together, defend their territory together, and raise their young together. But infidelity happens, and sometimes it leads to genuine domestic conflicts that ornithologists have been observing for years. It starts with courtship. In the spring, the male becomes especially active. He puffs out his chest, shows off his black bib, calls loudly, and even brings the female building materials for the nest: grass stems, feathers, scraps of paper. If she responds favorably, the two of them choose a location together, under the overhang of a house, in a birdhouse, in a gap between bricks, or even inside an old street lamp. Both birds build the nest, though the female usually takes the lead. She has higher standards for comfort. The pair is formed. They guard their territory from neighbors, forage together, and everything seems harmonious. But sparrow nature is more complicated than that. Despite the outward appearance of monogamy, females do occasionally mate with other males. A female may pair with a neighboring male while her regular partner is out foraging or chasing off a predator. Through DNA analysis, scientists have found that in some colonies, up to 20 to 30% of chicks are not fathered by the official partner. This is an evolutionary strategy. The female acquires genes from a stronger or more genetically attractive male, while keeping a reliable partner who will help with raising the young. But the males are no fools. They watch the female's behavior carefully. If they sense infidelity, through smell, through behavioral cues, or simply through instinct, the response can be quite severe. In some cases, the male stops feeding chicks he suspects aren't his. He simply stops bringing food, and the female is left alone with the brood. It sounds harsh, but in the sparrow world, this is a mechanism to ensure that resources go toward the male's own genetic offspring. Ornithologists have documented these kinds of family disputes everywhere from European cities to American parks. Now consider how extraordinarily prolific these birds are. In a single warm season, a pair can produce 4 to 5 clutches. Each clutch contains 3 to 7 eggs, small, white, speckled with gray. The female incubates them for 11 to 14 days, while the male feeds her, bringing insects and seeds directly to the nest so she doesn't have to leave the eggs. When the chicks hatch, they are completely naked, blind, and helpless, little pink bundles of skin with enormous eyes sealed shut under their lids. Each one weighs less than a gram, but nature gave them a furious pace of development. Within just 14 to 16 days, these hatchlings are fully feathered, ready to fly, and prepared to leave the nest. Throughout this period, the parents work themselves to exhaustion. Both the male and the female take turns feeding the chicks. They can make 300 to 400 feeding trips to the nest in a single day. In the early stages, the diet is almost exclusively insects, caterpillars, and other protein-rich prey that support rapid growth. The parents hunt from dawn to dusk, catching flies, aphids, and small beetles. As the chicks grow, the menu gradually shifts. Seeds, crumbs, and grain are added. The parents show the young birds where to find food and teach them to peck on their own. Even after the chicks leave the nest, the parents continue supplemental feeding for another week or two until the young are fully independent. This extraordinary productivity is what makes sparrows one of the most numerous birds on Earth. High mortality rates among chicks, cats, crows, cars, cold, are offset by sheer volume of offspring. Across 4 or 5 clutches per season, enough young survive to sustain a population in the billions. It is the strategy of quantity rather than quality. Not everything invested in one perfect offspring, the way eagles do it, but dozens produced per season. And the family works as a coordinated team. Even after infidelity, in most cases, both parents still raise the brood together because the survival of the group matters more than personal grievances. Sparrow family life is a mix of romance, hard pragmatism, and remarkable parental devotion. They form pairs, build nests, risk their lives for their young, and teach their children to survive in a world where humans are both ally and potential threat. That is why there are so many of them around us. Every year, a new generation of gray fledglings fans out across our cities and continues a story that has been running for 11,000 years. Family values, sparrow style, drama, infidelity, and heroic parenting all in one small gray package. And thanks to all of this, they remain our eternal companions. But sometimes the story of these little birds becomes so entangled with human history that it changes the fate of entire nations. The most shocking and tragic chapter is coming up. All that astonishing productivity, those family values laced with infidelity and heroic chick rearing. This is the everyday life of sparrows in their vast colonies around the world. But sometimes, the story of these small gray birds reaches far beyond balconies and parks and city courtyards. Sometimes it becomes literally intertwined with the fate of entire countries, demonstrating how a creature weighing just 30 grams can alter the course of human history, devastate an economy, and cost millions of lives. The most famous, most tragic, and most instructive story happened in China in 1958. At that time, China under Mao Zedong was launching an enormous national project called the Great Leap Forward, an ambitious program intended to transform a poor agricultural country into a powerful industrial nation within just a few years. One of the key components of this campaign was the Four Pests program. The enemies designated for elimination were rats, flies, mosquitoes, and the house sparrow. Why the sparrow? Mao and his advisors concluded that sparrows were the primary threat to agricultural production. According to calculations from the Chinese Institute of Zoology, each bird consumed up to 4.5 kilograms of grain per year, and the country was home to billions of sparrows. By that logic, they were stealing the harvest that the people needed for industrialization. The reasoning seemed ironclad. The propaganda machine ran at full power. Sparrows were labeled household thieves. Posters showed them eating grain. They were declared enemies of socialism. And one of the largest, most absurd, and most tragic campaigns in the history of human civilization began. Across the entire country, from the smallest villages to enormous cities like Beijing and Shanghai, a total war on sparrows was declared. Millions of people were mobilized: farmers, school children, students, factory workers, government officials, even soldiers. People poured into the streets, onto the rooftops of buildings, and into the fields, armed with pots, pans, drums, gongs, flags, and sticks. Their mission: to prevent sparrows from landing anywhere, even for a second. The birds took off in panic, circling in the air for hours, until they dropped from total exhaustion directly at the feet of the crowds. They were beaten with sticks, trampled, shot with slingshots and firearms. Nests were destroyed, eggs smashed, nestlings killed on the spot. In some areas, grain laced with poison was scattered. The campaign ran without interruption for several months. In the city of Shanghai alone, nearly 900,000 birds were destroyed in just 3 days. According to incomplete official statistics, by November of 1958, approximately 1 billion sparrows had been exterminated across China. Some estimates put the number as high as 2.1 billion. 2 billion small gray birds, birds that had spent thousands of years helping humans control insects, were effectively erased from a country the size of a continent. At first, everything looked like a tremendous victory. Grain yields actually increased slightly in the first year. The pests were gone, and crops seemed to benefit. People celebrated, painted victory posters, sang songs about the great triumph over the sparrow, held parades with piles of dead birds. Mao himself continued to insist at the Lushan Conference in 1959 that sparrows remained a problem and must be eliminated. But within months, nature revealed its true and merciless power. Without sparrows consuming daily tons of caterpillars, locusts, and other insects, the pest population exploded. Fields and orchards were devoured faster than farmers could harvest them. Locusts and caterpillars destroyed crops as quickly as they grew. Yields collapsed catastrophically. Research published in 2025 found that the campaign against sparrows alone caused a 20% drop in agricultural output in the most affected regions. What followed was one of the deadliest famines in human history. The Great Chinese Famine of 1959 to 1961 killed millions of people from starvation, disease, and exhaustion. Total death toll estimates range from 15 million to 55 million. More recent scientific work, including research by economist Xin Meng of the Australian National University, suggests that the destruction of sparrows directly contributed to nearly 2 million additional deaths. State grain collection policies that continued to extract food even from starving villages made the catastrophe worse. The ecological imbalance created by human hands became one of the primary causes of the tragedy. The government eventually recognized the catastrophic mistake. By 1960, sparrows were quietly removed from the list of 4 pests. More than that, China began secretly importing live sparrows from the Soviet Union and other countries to try to restore the population. But the damage was done. This story became a defining case study in why it is so dangerous to interfere with an ecosystem without deeply understanding all of its connections. The sparrow, declared an enemy, was in reality one of the primary guardians of the harvest. It was eating the pests, not the grain, at least not at the scale that had been assumed. A small bird showed the entire world. You cannot simply remove a species from nature. The consequences will be global, tragic, and lasting. Today, sparrows continue to astonish us, but in entirely different ways. They didn't just survive all of this. They came back stronger, more adaptable, and in some regions more aggressive than ever. In North America, Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Europe, the house sparrow is classified as an invasive species. They compete successfully with native birds, displace them from nesting sites, occupy their territories, and sometimes kill competitors outright. In the United States and Canada, sparrows actively take over nest boxes designed for bluebirds, tree swallows, and purple martins. They don't just take up space, they destroy eggs, kill nestlings, and sometimes kill adult females of competing species. With their extraordinary productivity, 4 to 5 clutches per season, and aggressive temperament, they are pushing native birds out of cities and suburbs. In some states, their populations have grown so large that ornithologists are sounding the alarm. Local biodiversity is declining specifically because of these gray invaders, and they thrive in conditions where other birds won't even appear. An entire colony nested in a Yorkshire coal mine 600 meters underground. They nest on the rooftops of New York skyscrapers 80 floors up. They have moved into the Arctic tundra, into scorching deserts, into the Siberian wilderness. They've learned to trigger automatic grocery store doors, to memorize individual human faces, and to pass knowledge through their colonies from one generation to the next. Their adaptability is genuinely staggering. They can drink salt water. They can digest almost any food source. They can survive anywhere that humans have made the conditions favorable. But the most important thing is this: sparrows remain a living symbol of how a small bird can change the world. They remind us of the fragility of ecosystems and of the fact that even the most ordinary-looking neighbor on this planet plays an enormous role. Without them, we would have faced far greater pest crises long ago. They have been with us for 10,000 years. They survived wars, revolutions, famine, and campaigns of total extermination, and every morning they are still outside our windows, chattering away, as if to say, "We are here. We are part of your story. We are not going anywhere, even if you declare war on us." That is what they are, our eternal companions, superheroes in gray feathers, family-oriented birds with real personalities, and genuine protagonists of world history. The next time you see a flock of sparrows on the sidewalk or hear their familiar chirping in the yard, stop for just a moment. Look at them differently. What you're seeing is not just ordinary gray birds. You're looking at living proof that size doesn't matter when it comes to impact on the world. Small, but incredibly powerful. Overlooked, but irreplaceable. And that is why the story of sparrows is, in the end, really the story of us.